And we are live. It is Friday, the 1st of May. We have reached May finally, people. This is Across the Pond with Addy Chats, Anakin Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one, and everyone's favorite Scotland Yard detective, Mr. Jon Wedger. Jon, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, good, thanks, Addy. All's well. And yourself?
I'm doing well, yeah. I am enjoying the nice weather that has been going on here in the Pacific Northwest, although it is raining today. But as far as the corona epidemic goes, Jon, how have things transpired in London since we last spoke?
Well, London's sort of coming back to normal. It's bizarre because there's actually getting traffic jams. Gridlock traffic in London, which you didn't get a couple of weeks ago. The police aren't enforcing anything, as far as I know. I've got a couple of friends that are still officers in the Metropolitan Police, the London Police Force, and they were just saying that there's just huge confusion. And that all they have to do is just report back on how many people they think are actually violating this lockdown. But I don't think they've got the resources to deal with it. But also, you're getting officers going out in like buses, and there are about 10 of them in this bus. No face masks. When the police go out, they've got no face masks. There's none of this social distancing, and as far as I'm aware, everything's going back to normal. But apart from public spaces like parks, where they're telling people to move on, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Wow.
People are they're going back to work. A lot of people now. They're fed up of it in London now. Totally fed up of it.
Are they doing that just without regard to what the government is saying? They're just going back to work?
I think so. I mean, people are being paid to stay at home, but there's other people. One of my lads, for instance, he can't afford to stay at home, so he's taking on casual work. So
I'm seeing the same thing in California, where there's protests going on for basically the economy to be reopened again. And actually in my home state, in Wisconsin as well, in the capital of Madison, there was a huge protest going on. Speaking of my home state of Wisconsin and related to what we're talking about, Jon, I actually saw this video on Twitter of a woman essentially getting visited by police in Wisconsin for having a play date for her child, which is pretty absurd. Yeah, it's pretty short video. It's like 2 minutes. Yeah, and it's I'll put the link in the description if people want to check that out.
We're getting similar things. There's a guy just out with his dog, and he went fishing in a lake. Arrested him. So I mean, why? Why arrest him? He's no threat to anyone. He's miles away from anyone. He's not causing any problem. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It just is overzealous, stupid behaviour. And I mean, there was a report come out. I think there was this viral video going about 2 doctors in New York who are just saying that, the death rate is 0.001%. It just none of it makes any sense. I mean, also now, it's becoming an offence to sort of go and visit someone, to hug someone, it's mind control. It's just pure madness. But I was informed of one man that I knew, and I was told by a friend that he had died of coronavirus. So I contacted his family, and they went, yeah, well, they put it on his birth certificate. They said, but he was overweight. He had a stroke many times. He was borderline alcoholic, and he had diabetes. And they said he never died of corona. He had a heart attack, and it went down as corona on his death certificate. But that is the only person I've heard of that's close to me that has gone down, but his family is disputing it. But what they're doing is there's no post-mortem, which is, they've changed the law, which is contrary to the Coroner's Act. So there's no post-mortem, and the bodies they're authorising to be cremated. So there's not going to be a second post-mortem. So there's going to be no verification of how anyone died.
Did that law just change recently, Jon, that post-mortem procedure?
Yeah, it was brought in because of this thing.
Wow, that is kind of scary. And do you know the details exactly of what that entails?
No, I don't. No. But what I'm saying is that in order to be signed, their death certificate to be signed, the doctor has to authorise the death, and then it goes to a coroner, and a coroner countersigns it. And if there is an unexplained death, then there's got to be an inquest. So if there's not been a doctor present at time of death, like in a hospital, if it's outside a hospital, it has to go to an inquest. If it's suspicious death, it has to have a special post-mortem. So there's a post-mortem, which is basically, and I've been to many in my police careers, post-mortems are very gruesome. But if it's a suspicious death, it's a special post-mortem. And none of these need to be subject to any of it, and they don't need a corroborative signature, so they don't need any counter-signatory. And then the bodies are being cremated. It just, the whole thing, it just stinks, man. You know, I've just done a podcast to do with the fact, with all the child abuse that was going on globally, especially in the UK and America, and that's now all been forgotten about.
And that was your, which podcast was that, John? Because let's get into that a little bit. Because you did send me the R.A.I.N.S list, and I did check that out a bit before we spoke today. Last time we spoke, John texted me the R.A.I.N.S list. And do you want to tie that into what you're speaking about right now, John?
Yeah, of course. But what I'm saying, if we before I finish with the coronavirus, I've been doing an interview with one of the FBI's sort of top 10. It's in the top 10 criminal profilers, but she deals with pedo criminals, so sex offenders, but also with child murderers. So she's one of the top in the world, and is sort of accredited by the FBI. It's a lady from Belgium called Corinne, good friend of mine. I've done a lot of work with Corinne, and we were talking about the corona. She's not buying it either. But what we're saying is the deaths, 0.001% of deaths, right? Whereas you take like the direct and indirect effects of paedophilia, well, it will account for so many deaths: alcoholism, drug addiction, violence, you know, cancer, some of the cancers, you know, where people just neglected themselves and gone downhill because of it all. So it's that should be a priority. Now sex crimes, paedophilic crimes are now being ignored. We was on an epoch, you know, sorry, I'll just get these messages coming up. A massive awakening, you know, a revelation, an Armageddon, whatever you might call it, of paedophilia being exposed in the UK and the US, especially with the Epstein and with Prince Andrew. It's all been forgotten about to a degree, Addy, that Prince Andrew, as disgraced as he was, and as accused of being a paedophile that he was, that he's now being sort of respected for putting food parcels together for the people affected by coronavirus. And again, when we look at our national television, our British broadcasting, the BBC, how they were exposed for covering up for one of their main patrons, Jimmy Savile. And Jimmy Savile was exposed to being a multiple child rapist, necrophiliac, and a Satanist. How they covered up for many years. Now, the BBC was discredited to such a degree that it's funded by public fee-paying funds, that people weren't paying the fees, and they were looking at removing the license fee, right? You know, this was only a couple of months before the corona thing. Now, the BBC is a main focal point of information, and they're seen again as being a national treasure. So it's just terrible, terrible. Now, the R.A.I.N.S list. Now, you know, I will say to my brothers, sisters, and cousins in America, please Google this. This is easily accessed. R.A.I.N.S is an acronym: R.A.I.N.S. Romeo, Alpha, India, November, Sierra. R.A.I.N.S list. And if you put on the word spider cat, all one word, spider and cat in one word, you will get this list up, and you'll get a video that comes up with it. There you have it. And this is a sort of a who's who and a what's what and a where's where of people involved in satanic ritual abuse and child murders. This has never been discredited, this list, and it was composed by a doctor, a very respected doctor called Dr. Joan Coleman. And Dr. Joan Coleman was a therapist at the world-renowned Maudsley Hospital in South London, which dealt with the premier sort of focal point for mental health. And she kept getting people coming that were been sexually abused, which were heavily traumatized. But not only that, sorry, I've just got a bit of a cough.
Oh, you're good, John.
Not corona related.
You can take a sip of water if you want to, John.
Yeah. So
go for it. Here, I'll join you. Oh wait, I'm out of water. Never mind, I can't join you.
So Joan Coleman started getting a lot of victims and survivors of sexual abuse, but not only was it sexual abuse, you know, the hardcore ones were reporting that they'd been abused in a satanic religious connotation, and they started mentioning names, and some of the names they mentioned involved politicians, celebrities, and many other people, you know, in public life. But she
Are
would
these
only
exclusively politicians and celebs in the UK, John, or is it
in the UK. This is
the
all in the
UK?
UK.
Okay.
But she would only commit a name to paper if it was corroborated by 3 independent sources. So as you can imagine, it will be 3 times the size, possibly, people involved. But this list has got Jimmy Savile's on there. There's politicians such as Leon Britton, who was a Home Secretary, the Home Secretary who was in charge of the police. So in Parliament, so any sort of criminal allegation or criminal investigation that was high profile that the police were managing, this guy could in effect frustrate it, as well he did. We have got famous celebrities. We had a senior police officer that was in charge of the unit I was on, the specialist unit I was on at Scotland Yard. His name is on there. We've got chief constables, chief officers of police. They are named on it. And not only are they named on it, addresses, locations, car registration numbers are on there, and their activities on there. And their activities, you know, they go from anything from rape to kidnap to torture to child murder. And this list has never ever been discredited. And if you watch the video, it's called "Where is the Outrage?" And that's so true. Where is the outrage? Why are the British public not being outraged that these perverts, these child murderers, these paedophiles are named on this list and are still in public eye? And there's journalists on there as well. It's just an absolutely appalling read. But
if you send me that link, John, to that video of Where is the Outrage, I will put it in the description box.
Yeah. If you put in Rain's List and Spider Cat, and you go onto videos, it will come up. It will come up. I was watching it earlier through that link, and it's just disgusting. I mean, there will be some celebrities that are known globally, but on the whole, lot of them are sort of UK domestic ones. But it is. But see, this isn't confined to the UK. I mean, you know, yourselves, you had Anton LaVey, you know, in California with the Church of Satan, you know, and when he brought out the Satanic Bible, it outsold in California the Holy Bible 3-1. So it's a very, very real and dangerous problem, this, you know.
Wow. That is, yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. And I will put those links to the R.A.I.N.S list and the video in the description box below. But as you said previously, John, you just did an interview with Karine, who is an expert FBI sex criminal profiler. Do you have any other work that you are doing? Because I know you got your Brew with a View show that you've been doing as well.
Yeah, Brew with a View. I mean, the reason it's called Brew, you know, it's a brew of tea. The northern part of the UK calls having a cup of tea. The British love their cups of tea. You know, we drink more tea than they do in India, and that comes from the days of the Raj. You know, tea. You know, if you take anything off the British, you don't take their cup of tea away. They love a cup of tea. You know, and we call it a brew because you brew it. You know, you infuse it in water, add milk, and there's your tea. So I do it from the rooftop of London. I've just finished it tonight, but I run out of battery, hence my tardiness for this one. I do the Brew review, but I'm also doing my podcast now. I've sort of now I'm educated now to use like the split screen podcasting, which I didn't know before. And I'm going at this full pelt, full guns now, because in this time of lockdown, I'm calling for people to do their research, you know, use the time wisely to educate themselves. And what I'm saying is, you know, we have to have enough. We have to now say, Addy, no more to this. Yeah. Our police are failing. They are failing to investigate sex crimes against children. Our politicians are covering up sex crimes against children. You know, Satanism isn't even being mentioned by mainstream media. But while this is going on, right, these perpetrators are getting away with it, and our children are being preyed on. our vulnerable have been preyed on, and they have rubbished our society to a degree where, you know, single parenting is the norm. You know, children in one family having all different fathers is a norm.
Yeah.
Dysfunctionality is a norm, and it's wrong. And I'm not imparting hard Christian values on the people. I'm not, but it's wrong because these are the children that get preyed on. So what I always say, if I upset an adult, I don't care. Really don't care if I upset an adult. I am not here to placate adults. You're old enough and ugly enough to look after yourselves. I'm here to protect the rights of children and make sure children do not get abused. And that is my prime focus. And I did a real angry, corral rousing speech today. It went on for about an hour, and I was angry at it. And I've just said to people, enough. Stop telling me what I should do. What are you doing? You know, and they're saying you need to get in touch with Joe Rogan, for example. I said, well, why should I get in touch with Joe Rogan? If you know Joe Rogan, give him my details, get him to contact me. I'll go on his show. You know, I'll do an hour with him. David Icke. Well, why should I get in touch with David Icke? Knows who I am. Why is David Icke not promoting my work? Because I'm doing good. You know, we've got another American guy called the London Real Show. His name's Brian Rose. Very popular in here. And I said again, I've emailed this guy. He's never got back to me. So, you know, while he's talking about financial collapse and that, why are we not talking about child abuse and the major cover-ups? And I'm one of the main advocates for exposing this. Why are they not getting in touch with me? I am fed up of trying, holding out an olive branch to them, and they're doing nothing. So I will say to you, to my friends and colleagues, cousins and brothers and sisters in America, right? Anyone who wants me on their show, get in touch. You know, the internet is a phenomenal thing. Joe Rogan, get me on Joe Rogan, a Scotland Yard detective who stood up. I've shared a stage with Frank Serpico. You know, get me on there and I'll speak about corruption in the motherland in the UK involving child abuse. Right?
Definitely.
What more worthier topic to talk about than that? So let's get out there. Time to get out the trenches, go over the top and start fighting. We need our work shared. We are not happy no more, Addy, with 2,000, 3,000 views. No more. F that. We want 1 million views, 2 million views, because we want those in power to know that us as a global nation, we have had enough of our children being sexually abused.
Well said, John. And yeah, if anyone listening to this who somehow it has an in with Mr. Rogan and that team, try to get at him. Anybody who may be listening. Now, I agree, John. It seems it's really unfortunate and backwards that these type of topics don't get the views that other topics do. I do foresee, and I think this will be a good problem to have, is if at some point in the future that this topic of child abuse and especially child sex abuse becomes profitable, it could get hijacked in the future. And it seems like everything does at some point once it gets to a certain level of bigness. But again, that is a good problem to have, because that means people are aware of it and we are not there yet.
But well, let's worry about that when and if it happens, you know. For the time being, exactly. You know, let's get our voices heard. Let's stand up and just say no more. We don't want this anymore. We don't want our police departments not investigating this. We don't want our politicians coming at us. We don't want the silence of our religious institutions. Where is the church's voice in this? Why is the church not speaking up against this? I was on last week. I was on Voice for Islam Radio, so I've been on Islamic radio. Right? I've never been on Christian radio. Not once has any Christian, Catholic, Protestant, Anglican church radio station had me on there. Not once. I've been on with the Sikh community. I have never met such a honourable religious group that are committed to protecting children than the Sikhs. Yet they are such a minority group. But they're hardcore, you know, and you know that you've got a lot of Sikhs in the US, you know, and these are stand-up guys. I love them to bits. If I was ever to convert to a religion, I'd become a Sikh. You know, I think they're awesome. But you know, it's just, look, people's silence is exposing themselves. No more, no more. You know, we can't.
Now is the time. There's no better time to speak your mind, I think, than now. And this is something I'm trying to get people to do too. John, is young people are afraid to speak because of how we've been socially programmed by the universities and the political climate, especially here in the United States. It's even more polite than, I mean, like Englanders, like you guys have it bad, yes, with the PC stuff, but especially in terms of law enforcement doing that. But I would argue that here in the social pressure is even greater for that. So that's part of my goal too, is just to get people to speak out in general, let alone about topics as important as this. Go ahead, John. Just one final statement before we sign off.
Yeah, I've got a logo now for Free Pepsi Watson. I'll forward it over to you.
Oh wow, that's excellent, John. That's awesome.
I'm up in my campaign to get Pepsi. Adam Watson out of prison. Adam is my brother campaigner. I've been lost without him, and I want him out, free, back on the streets, back with me, back working, back podcasting, back spreading word, back attacking paedophiles and promoting an anti-paedophile movement. So I will send you a copy of the T-shirt that you can maybe get printed out there.
Yes, yes, definitely. I can do that,
and next time we meet, have our free Adam Watson, Pepsi Watson T-shirts on, and keep going. But sorry for the lateness, Ads, but I'm always here, my friend.
Yeah. Let's talk again soon, John. This weekend maybe, or early next week.
Yeah, of course. I'm always here. But please, to your viewers, get me on these shows. Get me out there. I'm not frightened no more, and I'm not standing back anymore. I'm here to speak out for the victims and survivors of child abuse.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jon Wedger on Across the Pond.
God bless. See you later.